Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where the post-pandemic box office continues to evolve in fascinating yet still uncertain ways. We're going to have another incredible conversation. There is so much interesting stuff happening right now. Thank goodness, because it is slow. I think as Hollywood is a little shell-shocked. Hollywood, as you know, is very risk-averse. And for decades, perhaps to some degree, there's been change since Hollywood first started, but it's been gradual. And there will occasionally be things that are an upset, but for the most part, they have their formulas and they have the way things are supposed to go. But everything's upside down. Everything's topsy-turvy. So, everyone did expect global superstar Taylor Swift to boost the box office, although the real shocker there, of course, was that she didn't partner with a movie studio, but went right to AMC. But Japan dominating this weekend at the box office? Now that was a surprise. Whew! But what are the takeaways here going forward? It's not so easy, as we're going to discuss. Beyonce's concert film, right in the wake of Taylor Swift's success, that film fell a shocking 77% in just its second weekend. Taylor fell mid-60s and opened much bigger. So that's very disappointing. And I'm sorry, Beyonce fans. I know you were sad enough with how the film opened, so this must be devastating. I know a lot of Beyonce fans were like, Beyonce doesn't care about box office numbers. To some degree she doesn't, because she made so much money off of her actual tour. But this isn't great. But she'll be fine, but this is not great. All right, let's discuss. But first off, while there's some exciting developments here for sure, it's important to note that we're still in a niche space here. A $12.8 million debut for any Hollywood film would be considered disastrous, and in fact has been for films this year like The Creator and A Haunting in Venice. Gareth Edwards is probably like, what? I opened it around there. Why is nobody saying great stuff about my movie? Poor Gareth Edwards. And then also, I think to some degree it's fan chatter. Like The Creator, A Haunting in Venice, everybody's like, meh. But with these other movies, everybody's like, look how high we got them, right? And Strange World, by the way, another animated movie, last year debuted around here. But when it came in at this number, everybody was like, the end is near for Disney. This is similar to Hollywood cutting Killers of the Flower Moon and Napoleon a break, yet crucifying the Marvels, even though their box office performances and budgets have been about the same. It's all a matter of perspective, expectations, and let's be honest, feelings. Hollywood has long been frustrated by superhero movies dominating the theatrical space, and they want more serious cinematic fare to do well. So that's kind of affected how they've discussed those films. And then likewise, a number of fans are frustrated by Hollywood's lack of quality and strong one-sided messaging, making them eager to see outsiders not just thrive, but dunk on Hollywood. For instance, a number of conservatives have rallied behind Minus One as some kind of Godzilla-sized middle finger to Hollywood. Yet director-writer Takashi Yamazaki's greatest wish isn't just to work in Hollywood, but for Kathleen Kennedy. So I think he's clearly very much outside of the conversation that's happening in the North American space right now with fans. Poor guy. All right, so he's like, he has no idea what he's getting into. So while it's really cool to see some outliers for sure get their moment in the spotlight, and they might be opening the door for others, and things might be changing, right? But if it is, it's the very early days. And also it's exciting to see movie theaters think outside the box, not only because it gets these outliers their moment, but also they have to. Movie theaters are struggling. So they're like, what else can we put in here? And, this has certainly helped them during these 2 slow weeks post-Thanksgiving. But these movies aren't generating enough business to keep theaters operating at the level that they're supposed to, that they need to for the long term. Like Godzilla Minus One and The Boy and The Heron aren't even going to get Wish and Napoleon domestic numbers, and those movies are considered huge flops. Now, to be fair, as many of you pointed out last week, Godzilla Minus One has a much smaller budget of just around $15 million, and The Boy and The Heron's budget, while much bigger, did still come in under $100 million. But Hollywood needs blockbusters, and the whole movie business, theatrical in North America, needs Hollywood blockbusters to come back online. The whole business, worldwide, by the way, worldwide, can't survive without them. I think that maybe 20, 30, 50 years from now, it might be different, but the other film industries across the globe just aren't able to pull in the kind of numbers that Hollywood can when Hollywood is working as it should. So let's hope that Hollywood, this is a wake-up call for them, and they get back on track. All right, now, today we're going to talk about Japanese films in North America. Wow, this is incredible. Projections for Wonka, which are looking quite rosy. The specialty market, which had not one but two big winners this weekend. And Renaissance is, again, shocking second weekend drop. So for the first time ever, the North American box office looks like that of many overseas countries, where multiple foreign films are not just in the top 10, but high up. Like, as you can see, number 1 and number 3. There have been foreign language films that have been number 1 before, particularly since the pandemic came in. We're going to talk about that. But to have multiple films, that's where I think it's a really big deal. Not only these two, but of course, a little further down, you see India's Animal, which is also still in the top 10. So that's really, really incredible. Now, why has this not happened before? Well, the main reason is that in the past, the Hollywood studios intentionally would buy the rights to overseas foreign language hits, not UK films, because Hollywood and the UK film industry are very close. But they would take these foreign language hits and they would buy the rights to them and then they would bury them so they wouldn't really get a North American release. And then the Hollywood studios would remake those films as English language movies. One of the most prominent, I think, offensive examples of this was France's The Untouchables. I mean, I saw both those movies and the difference in quality is night and day. And that, by the way, was actually remade in 3 different languages overall. So this has been something, Hollywood, of course, is the main offender, but it's been the way it's worked for a very long time. Now, there, of course, have been exceptions, which many people are probably already typing down below. We're talking about Parasite, The Artist, Instructions Not Included, Amelie, Life is Beautiful. Some of you might be like, what about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? But American studios were involved in the making of that film, so I don't think that totally counts. And as you can see, usually an awards boost is what has really helped many of these foreign language films do so well at the North American box office. Everyone's like, oh, it's such a celebrated movie, we should go check it out. But the times, they are a-changin', right? So first off, streaming services, hugely influential, driven largely by Netflix's success in this space. And Netflix is successful here because this is their whole strategy, their whole content strategy. They're the ones who really pioneered and aggressively pushed dubbing because they want all their content to play in every country. And they've gotten really good at dubbing. They do an excellent job. And also they've popularized subtitles because a lot of people want to watch the movie in the original language. By the way, The Boy and The Heron, they kind of split their showtimes between dubbed and original Japanese language with English subtitles. And despite having an all-star cast, a lot of people opted for the, not exact numbers were released, but I was checking the ticket sales where you can see like the ticket seat maps on Fandango. A lot of people wanted to see it in the original Japanese. So that's incredible. And I think Netflix is streaming overall, but I think Netflix personally is kind of responsible for that. And getting North American audiences used to dubbed and or subtitled entertainment. Also, to some degree, animation for adults, which I think really benefited The Boy. And I guess maybe just genre content. So it benefits, again, both movies. Then, as the old school OG studios struggle at the box office and with public opinion, and some of them are merging or going out of business, etc., that leaves space for other distributors to make some moves. The Boy and The Heron is distributed by G-Kids. This is their first number 1 ever. Dragon Ball Superhero, distributed by Crunchyroll, was number 1 back in August 2022 with 21.1 million, actually almost double. And Toho is distributing Godzilla Minus One in North America themselves, which is likely why they've relied so heavily on internet advertising and fan word of mouth on social media, because they just don't have the revenue to do the advertising dollars. The Boy and the Heron, which opened this weekend, got an A- cinema score. Its audience was 54% male. That's actually not too overwhelmingly male. That's very interesting. Come on, female fans, let's get in here. 80% between 18 to 34. Again, I think showing how much social media is encouraging people to check out the film. And also, streaming services popularizing animation for adults, particularly, I think, with younger viewers. And then, ethnicity-wise, 43% Caucasian, 27% Asian, very high for that demographic, much higher than usual for North American releases. 22% Latino, and then only just 7% Black, which I find interesting. Because, a lot of Black moviegoers are fans of genre and, sci-fi stuff and things like that. So, everybody else you can see kind of turned out, except not that demographic. Godzilla Minus One in its second weekend, I don't believe they ever released demographic information for this movie. Maybe because it's from Toho and they just kind of aren't set up to do that, and they aren't really part of the Hollywood machine. G-Kids, while they have never had a big movie like this before, they've been releasing movies for quite some time in North America. Now, Godzilla Minus One, it says here by the trades, it added 232 theaters, but Toho has been throwing out very different numbers on social media. I don't know what that's about. They insisted that they doubled their theater count, but these numbers that you're looking at here in terms of theater count, etc., are coming directly from the North American theaters themselves. So it opened in over, according to the actual theaters playing the movie, it opened in over 2,000 theaters last weekend and added just 232 for its second weekend. But it fell just 31%, which is very nice for fans who are expecting that kind of a hold, so I'm glad that you got it. Vindication for you. The real question, though, will be what happens next weekend when Wonka opens, and Wonka is taking over all the premium screens. I do think Godzilla Minus One could rally again on digital, especially if Toho can rush it out for the New Year's window. I think it's going to be pretty much done after this weekend. I think these were the 2 weekends to go see it, but then people will still be like, oh yeah, that movie that did so well a couple of weeks ago. So between Christmas and New Year's, I think it would do great on digital. Let's see if Toho can move that fast in the North American space. I think fans will want to own it, although these kind of fans, I think, might want to wait for the physical media. So I don't know how beneficial that could be. But I do think a lot of casuals in that downtime between, Christmas and New Year's might be like, okay, let's see what all the fuss was about. And then over the holidays, back to Wonka, Wonka will have to share premium screens with Aquaman 2, The Color Purple, and Migration. Woo, what a traffic jam. That's 4 movies sharing just a few premium screens at each multiplex. I know in some theaters it doesn't matter. Good for you. I mean, I not only find that it's a superior experience in terms of the sound and the visuals, but I find that audiences are a little better behaved in a premium format because they spent more money, or they're a cinephile because that matters to them. So that's another reason that I prefer premium screens. Because I know some of you are like, what's it matter, Grace? Well, I think it matters in a couple of areas. So Aquaman 2 seems to have IMAX pretty much locked up for a few weeks there, but that means that leaves just Dolby for the other 3. So far, it seems Migration will play in the morning, Wonka in the afternoon, and The Color Purple in the evening. So keep that in mind when making your plans, if a premium screen is important to you as well. Wonka opened overseas this past week and was number 1 in 32 markets, doing particularly well in the UK. It was very strong in the UK. Although there, it opened where about the Boy and The Heron opened here. The UK box office is much smaller. So 11 at the UK is like a huge deal. Mexico and Spain. On social media, I was delighted to see many of you exclaiming that you are also surprised at how good the movie is. So that's fantastic. And Hollywood is now thinking that Wonka might over-deliver at the box office when it opens this coming weekend, doing better than its current $35 million projection. I don't know how much better. If it can have just a 4 in front of it, that would be phenomenal. Dare I hope for a 5 in front of it? I think that's too much to hope for. So a 4 in front of it would be amazing. However, I think Wonka and The Color Purple, both from Warner Brothers, Aquaman 2 also, but I think that these 2 movies will be the big Christmas films for a lot of people, and over the whole holiday season through New Year's. So I could see both these movies in particular playing for a number of weeks. We'll see, though. We'll see. So keep that in mind with their opening weekends. Aquaman 2 should be front-loaded, although not the first Aquaman, but I think Wonka and The Color Purple, while we want them to open strong, I think that they're movies that should have legs. But it all depends on audience reaction. So I was The Color Purple still hasn't played anywhere, and the review embargo is still up. I can talk about it a little bit because the social media embargo was lifted. But now that Wonka is playing overseas, I can see that the reaction is very good. So that's fantastic. Back to The Boy and the Heron and Godzilla Minus One. What does this mean going forward? Well, for one, I think more foreign films will try their hand at the North American marketplace, especially if they're genre-friendly, like these two movies are, animation, and then also Godzilla. And then they'll look for these pockets where Hollywood typically doesn't release anything and see if they can make a little cash there, which is what they did this time. These 2 weeks, typically nothing. Very small movies, if anything at all. Also, Godzilla is Toho's signature franchise, and fans are so in love with this new movie, it might end up being a real problem for Warner Brothers' upcoming Godzilla x Kong movie, which is a total 180 from this. Yamazaki wants to make a Star Wars movie, but perhaps his fate or future is that Warner Brothers and Toho might consider teaming up and giving him a much bigger budget for another Godzilla movie. If I were Warner Brothers, I would be considering that. I'd certainly put a phone call to Toho, as his film is also totally overshadowing the current Apple Monarch series. It's not good for American Godzilla content right now. On that note, I think Toho has made a very strong argument for Hollywood to stop leaving them out of the loop on Godzilla content. That's certainly a good way to handle it, right? We've talked like video games. We're like, why doesn't Hollywood work with the people who know the material? But Toho was in a unique position to actually release a competing film. They came over here, and as I said, they released it themselves. They didn't even partner with anybody else. And I think that's really interesting. So I hope Hollywood learned the lesson and lets them potentially co-drive, just like they're finally starting to do with video game creators. Really, Warner Brothers and Toho, get in the same room. Again, as I said with Kathleen Kennedy last week, right away, because you need the photo op right now. With The Boy and The Heron, some are saying this is a big win for hand-drawn animation, and maybe to some degree it is, especially for smaller and or foreign animation studios. I don't know if the big studios are going to want to get in on that because it's so expensive to switch over what kind of movies you're working on. And also Wish is trying to seem a bit hand-drawn in their style, but that has not worked out at all. And then also, Puss in Boots has kind of a sketch look to it, just like the Spider-Verse movies. But while the Puss in Boots eventually did well, although apparently some of you don't like that like rough animation style either. So it's tough. It's tough to know what to do. But that's why I think for smaller and or foreign animation studios, at least they know with hand-drawn, they're still in it. They can still be competitive. Also, it's Miyazaki, which I think is a big part of this. It's also a very good sign for the upcoming Avatar animated movies, which will be theatrical. Godzilla Minus One as well. I think I brought that up last week. I think this is it's a good sign for how those movies might perform. I just hope it hasn't been too long. But maybe the Netflix show, even though the creators left that show to start Avatar Studios at Paramount, maybe that show will still to some degree help their upcoming animated movies. All right, but in the short term, this really helps The Boy and the Heron's awards chances, not just for Best Animated Feature. I think it almost clinches a nomination for the Oscar category. Golden Globes are being announced tomorrow, so it's too late to affect that. But potentially, how it might fare in other categories as well. Speaking of awards season, 2 contenders made a big splash at the specialty box office this weekend. Poor Things, opening in just 9 theaters, delivered a stunning per theater average and got an A- cinema score. This was a smart move because diehard fans showed up and gave this, I think, potentially controversial film a great opening spin. Asteroid City and Beau is Afraid are the other bigger, this is hard to compare because the theater counts aren't always the same, but they are Poor Things is the 3rd biggest limited release, per theater average of the year. But these other 2 movies never connected with mainstream audiences, and their awards chances are nil, although Poor Things, of course, is a front runner. Here's a real surprise, though. For a movie that bills itself as a feminist tale, the audience skewed male, perhaps because, unlike Barbie, Poor Things is wall-to-wall nudity and sex scenes. Also, 70% of the audience was under 35, who also might not be put off by that. I think that's very interesting. And it might be why Poor Things has been so hot on social media as well. 62% of the audience was Caucasian. That I don't think is very promising for the longevity of the film, but because it doesn't seem to have broad appeal. 17%, so a lot of mostly like white guys went to see this movie. 17% Latino, 14% Asian, and 6% Black. I think one of 2 things will happen with this film going forward. Either it will become highly controversial once it finally does hit the mainstream. I mean, this filmmaker has always been very controversial, and a lot of his fans say that this is nothing new. I would disagree. I feel that this is the most controversial he's ever been. And also, his films have never really crossed over to the mainstream before. The Favorite, the most of all, but that was like nothing compared to the craziness of this film, let's say. Emma Stone was in that movie as well, but here she's even more front and center, and I think the trailers have been very good for the film, and they make it seem more mainstream than it actually is. So I think that'll either happen, or the mainstream will just totally ignore the film, and it'll just stay like an indie darling. As for its awards chances, as I just said, cinephiles are in love with this movie, so I think it will do very well, at least with nominations. Although, I think if it does get a lot of wins, just prepare yourself for conservative circles to make a big stink about the film's subject matter, because they're always looking for material, and this just serves it up to them on a silver platter. The other big splash this weekend in the specialty market came from Ava DuVernay's Origin, with the filmmaker trying to repair the damage to her career done by her own A Wrinkle in Time. It might be too late for Origin awards-wise. It really hasn't been part of the conversation, which makes it even more surprising that it blew up like it did at the box office. So maybe we're in for a surprise when the nominations start coming out for the big awards shows. But these box office numbers, at the very least, show that DuVernay might indeed be slowly but surely starting to make her way back. As for the overall top 10, strongholds across the board, actually, particularly towards the top, with no new wide releases. The Hunger Games continues to be Thanksgiving's pretty big winner this year, while Universal's Trolls 3 is now close to doubling Disney's domestic box office for Wish. Some are now thinking the Wish might not even get nominated for Best Animated Feature, much less win. But at least Elemental should make sure Disney isn't totally shut out of the category. So embarrassing. Again, I'm surprised that there is no reorganization at Disney Animation. It should have happened after Strange World, but maybe now? Beyonce's concert film, as I said, fell a shocking 77% in just its second weekend, underscoring that perhaps the film did come out too close to Taylor Swift's, which I said all along, and also just how bad the release date truly was. And that some of you also pointed out that it wasn't truly a concert movie, it was more of a documentary. Taylor's movie was about experiencing that concert if you were unable to attend, or if you wanted to experience it yet again. Whereas Beyonce's is more a documentary behind-the-scenes look at how she put the concert on. So that's also potentially a miscalculation on her team's part. And also that she's just simply not on a career high right now, like Swift. I mean, everyone's career ebbs and flows, and she just happens to be, on one of the low points. Well, but it seems so ridiculous to say that, because she just brought in a ton of money with the actual concert. So I think her team really needs to sit down and think about why this happened. Why do you think it happened? Bleecker Street Films put Broadway's long-running Waitress in theaters with middling results. Although, interestingly, this is not a film adaptation of the musical, but a filmed version of the actual live show. More experimentation on what they can put in theaters. And I think that's great. With a bigger show, although Waitress was pretty big for a while, with I think maybe bigger stars could have helped, there might be some money here. Also, Bleecker Street didn't really advertise this. And it's only for a limited release. It's only, I think, for 5 days or something. And then I guess it'll go to digital. But, there might be something here. Let's see how The Color Purple does, an actual film adaptation of a successful Broadway musical, and see, if the extra investment brings more of a return. Also with awards. I mean, this Waitress thing isn't going to get any Oscar nominations, but The Color Purple is considered to be a frontrunner. And, in my opinion, should be. India's Animal and Angel Studios' The Shift both suffered big second weekend drops as well, but at least remained in the top 10, while Silent Night did not, falling just outside the top 10. Over on streaming, with the season 2 finale, Loki finally got onto the overall chart. And number 4, it's not only on the chart, but it's high up there. That's how good the finale was. And also, I think it shows that maybe some people were waiting to binge. And, let's see if that is why, Echo's binge release is maybe a good idea. Although they need to combat churn, so they got to figure it out. Bit of a slow week overall, though, as you can see, with acquired show Bluey, always a strong performer, but it's number 1 this week. While Friends is still experiencing a surge in the wake of Matthew Perry's tragic death. On the OG chart, there's Loki at number 1, while Netflix's Blue-Eyed Samurai and Paramount Plus's Lawmen, Bass Reeves, that's going to be an anthology series focusing on different lawmen with each installment, starting off with Bass Reeves, they both made it onto the chart with their debuts. They're at the very bottom, so it's kind of a small win, but a nice one for both these shows. With movies, The Killer might be number 1, but it wasn't enough to rate the overall chart. That's not good. I mean, I kind of not that surprised with Michael Fassbender, but for David Fincher's movie not to be able to make the overall chart, there's someone who's also getting a wake-up call. And even before Thanksgiving, because you remember Nielsen is about a month behind, holiday movies were already popping here, and Universal is doing okay with some recent releases. As for Netflix's charts, for just last week, Adam Sandler and Jennifer Garner were in a photo finish for number 1, with Leo just edging out Family Switch. Now, it's the holidays. I still haven't watched Leo, but my family really likes cheesy holiday movies. So I often find myself at this time of year watching things I normally never otherwise would. So I've seen Family Switch, and I gotta tell you, it was actually not bad. But you know what was really good? And I can't believe it. I couldn't believe it when we were watching it. I was like, are we really gonna watch Candy Cane Lane? But so help me, I liked it. Fantastic visual effects, and I'm very curious to see how it did when it hits the Nielsen charts in about a week or two. With shows, Squid Game is such a soft number 1 in its second week that I continue to be shocked Netflix renewed it, because it's definitely not cheap to make, not with that prize. But maybe for season 2 it'll have a smaller prize, although I think a big part of the appeal is that it's an insane amount of money. What do you think? I just can't believe they renewed it. And I thought it was kind of like not a great success. All right, and true crime, I mean, people talked about it for sure, but I think it's not. It's a mere shadow of what the narrative scripted series was. And true crime continues to be a sweet spot for Netflix, with Bad Surgeon at number 2, while new comedy Obliterated is number 3. On iTunes, as I predicted right here on Movie Math a few weeks ago, Apple is selling/renting their super expensive movies first in the open market before putting them on their streaming service at no extra cost, although they did just raise the price for their streaming service. So first Killers of the Flower Moon, and then soon Napoleon. And it's working! They're getting some of their money back as it's number 1. As for the rest of the top 10, we've got a mix of recent theatrical releases and holiday fare, double Grinch, and Pierce Brosnan in a direct-to-digital thriller that has surprisingly good reviews for a direct-to-digital thriller. Then this coming weekend, after a 2-week break, Hollywood is back up and running, they hope, with Wonka hitting theaters, and American Fiction and The Zone of Interest, 2 strong awards contenders, getting limited releases. On digital, Taylor Swift's concert movie hits on December 13th. She loves the number 13. While on Friday, Apple TV has The Family Plan with Mark Wahlberg, Netflix has the new Aardman movie, and the star-studded yet long-shelved Finest Kind hits Paramount Plus. As for series, on Thursdays, it's the final 6 episodes of The Crown, the final 6 episodes ever, as the Netflix crown jewel, it used to be, not so much anymore, but as that show finally comes to an end, at least for a couple of years. I still feel maybe in 5 or 6 years, maybe they'll bring it back. While on Friday, Prime Video has the first 3 episodes of Reacher Season 2, and they're already filming Season 3. That's how hot that show is. And an animated series, Carol and the End of the World, hits Netflix. So that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what are your thoughts on this weekend's very surprising box office? Share them down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.